saw the roads just the other day, and they're all highways. What will tolling do? If we raise enough revenue to maintain this infrastructure, the big infrastructures that we are going to develop, we can then save the other money from road maintenance levy and other sources of revenue to go and construct roads in other parts of the country. My take, Mr. Speaker, if I'm approved by this House, my focus is to ensure that there is equity in distribution of roads in the Republic of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, as I grew up as a young man, I used to go 100 kilometers to find a tarmac from Embobu to Iten. And Mr. Speaker, for those who lived around Iten, they know there is a place in Iten called Mwishewalami. It is my responsibility to ensure that we eliminate Mwishewalamis across the country so that Kenyans progressively know that roads that are connecting county to county will be tarmacked. Roads will be also distributed equitably to areas. No child at this point in time, Mr. Speaker, should travel to another constituency to see a tarmac road. And progressively we should move to a situation where we'll say no child should move from a particular ward to go to another county. That is the principle of equity in that regard. Mr. Speaker, on the LAPSET, on the expressway last, just imagine this, Mr. Speaker, and I want to convince this committee, and hopefully I will convince Parliament later if I'm approved. Expressway has been built with, say, the initial price was 60 million, 60 billion, inflation or whatever, it's 78 billion. Kenyans should know that that expressway was not built using public money, it was private money. The only thing is that the concession is 30 years, okay, it's given to 30 years. I'm told today, the private investor is, the cars that are passing through the expressway now are 45,000. Meaning that in 3 months they have reached 45,000. If it moves to 200,000 a day, that investor will get 7 billion a year. If it gets 7 billion a year, it will mean that it will recoup investment within 10 to 12 years. Meaning in another 18 years, it will be making 7, maybe the shilling will have improved or down or whatever, it will get about 10 billion every year. To a private investor who has the latitude to take the money out of the country. My Mr. Speaker, position is that the ministry should focus on getting local investors. If that was a local investor, if it was a bank in the country, if it was a SACCO, Mr. Speaker, if it was a pension fund, they would know that in 10 years, this benefit will recoup to the pension fund and benefit the country. So I want us to see positively the private investment on our roads as one way also of creating employment and growing wealth.
Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I'm almost done.
Chair, not to interrupt the senator, and I see his passion in the tolling of roads. But Speaker, maybe he could also clarify as he answers my earlier question on the pending bills and everything else I asked. Are you also aware that those roads, as much as they are tolled, they're also public assets because they are built on public land?
Correct.
And I see you are more encouraging more of investment to benefit the investors who will be investing on those roads. But what of the ordinary Kenyan taxpayer? Because, for instance, let me use the expressway. If they collect so much money within a shorter period, we should be looking at concessions that are less years.
Correct.
And also the cost of building those toll roads, as you say, is also a matter. Is it a matter that is of concern to you as the incoming minister, or are we going to see an escalation of costs for tolled roads? Because if they were cheaper, then the concessions would be lower, and these assets will revert back to the public within a shorter period to benefit the people of Kenya, not just investors. I don't know whether the Chinese investors or the Chinese in quotes are more worthy of those investments than the Kenyan people.
I totally agree with the Honorable Kimani Chungwa, Mr. Speaker. The negotiation of the expressway, there were flaws. Some of the flaws were basically, okay, the Kenyan government decided that they are not going to take the risk just in case the investor is not going to meet his investment targets. But a proper calculation would have shown that in the fullness of time, that risk will not be there. And that's why I'm saying we must change from the model of the expressway, because the expressway now, the investor took his risk, but investor is taking a greater benefit in the long run. Number two is a public asset. We gave them the land that they are using to construct the road. That's not just enough, that also the other road, which is another problem we'll come to deal later with, is, Mr. Speaker, the road below has been destroyed and has been left, Mr. Speaker, in a more dilapidated stage. Again, there was a fund that was supposed to be given by the government of Kenya to ensure that the roads are restored, because the utility, the people who are in charge of the utilities, the water, the internet, and so forth, Mr. Speaker, in the process of relocating those utilities, it messed up the road. I really fear that if it rains soon, we'll have a serious problem of flooding in Imara Daima and those areas, and corrective measures are being worked out by Kenya National Highway Authority to deal with that issue. On the question of financing, again, Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah has raised a very important issue. In the short term, Mr. Speaker, we have a problem. Let me just say this: we have a problem. We are inheriting. This administration is inheriting nearly 140 billion shillings in the infrastructure sector, particularly the roads. Mr. Speaker, the reason why the roads have stalled is because we are unable to pay the contractors. And Mr. Speaker, the money to pay the contractors is not there, because we have committed that money to other sectors, Mr. Speaker, or maybe we chewed more than we could, we bit more than we could chew, Mr. Speaker. And so the problem here is that we are proposing, and the government of Kenya is proposing in its manifesto, that, Mr. Speaker, we will do securitization, but more importantly, and I think quickly, Mr. Speaker, we will use the road maintenance levy to, Mr. Speaker, guarantee a one-off, Mr. Speaker, a bond, infrastructure bond, that should be raised, pay off all the pending bills, and make sure that, in line with the plans we give the people of Kenya, we make sure that we complete the roads so that we achieve the equity we are talking about. We also want to safeguard, Mr. Speaker, this Parliament passed in the last, towards the end of Parliament, they passed a law to take more of the road maintenance levy to development. I think those are things we will sit down to review, because we must also, as we construct the roads, we must maintain. And let me use that opportunity, Honorable Kimani, to answer also the question of annuity. The annuity program, Mr. Speaker, was very unfortunate. The most unfortunate program that we ever implemented. The road from Ngong to Kiserian to Isinya, Kajiado there, Mr. Speaker, is 91 kilometers. Through annuity program, we are paying 28 billion, Mr. Speaker, to construct 91 kilometers. Mr. Speaker, this is ridiculous, because that road constructed conventionally, even with 80 million a kilometer, we would have used only 7 to 8 billion. It costs 500,000 shillings to maintain a road every year per kilometer. If you calculate for entire period of the 8 years that the annuity program will be managed, that road would only have cost, Mr. Speaker, 300 million to maintain. Now we've locked 28 billion every year on one road. We are paying 2.4 million to manage an annuity program. Mr. Speaker, I will scrap that program. If I am approved by this House, I will immediately scrap that program and have a conversation with the other two roads, Mr. Speaker, the one from Loitoktok and the other one in Modakashi, Mr. Speaker, moved to conventional way of constructing. It's even better to borrow than to engage resources in this annuity program. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, the last thing I was asked, I can see my time is far much spent, is that the issue of Aurora and Kimwarer, a very good question from my colleague. Mr. Speaker, I still believe that Aurora and Kimwarer was charges and stopping of the projects was politically motivated. And when we called the Speaker, P.S. Maringa to the committee of the Senate, Mr. Speaker, I don't know if you were there at that time, but he was fumbling and eventually whispered to me and said, you know, I was told. So, Mr. Speaker, the era of I was told should come to an end. And the era of stopping projects because you don't like the person who lives in that area or comes from that county. I, Mr. Speaker, will promise this committee that if I am elected, if I am approved by this committee to become the CS Roads, Transport and Public Works, I can assure you I will work for Kenyans to receive infrastructure in every part of the country, and no part of this nation will be denied infrastructure because, Mr. Speaker, of political choices that people make. And I can assure you, Honorable Opio Wandai, if there's any problem in your constituency, make sure we plan, it becomes the first place we'll visit to ensure that every part of Kenya ensures it gets its part of the. The last thing is open skies. Honorable Owen, let me use this to answer the whole thing about KA, Mr. Speaker, just briefly, is to say that KA has a responsibility to manage all airports. The Minister of Transport has a policy position on negotiating bilateral air agreements. You know that when we go to another country, Turkey, for example, and negotiate agreements, you know that the principle of reciprocity is extremely important. Because if you are giving a chance to an airline of another country to land in your country, they must also give you equivalent or equal rights for you to land in their country. So that is an area that we need to appreciate first. But second, and most important, we should move to answer, why are we in this situation? Why is Kenya Airways finding itself in the situation that it is? It's because of mismanagement of the past. The Project Mawingu, for this parliament is aware, because we probed that issue, Senate and National Assembly. We know what happened in Kenya Airways. There are processes underway, and the president is already seized of that issue, as far as I'm aware, to make sure that we talk about restructuring Kenya Airways in whatever ways to ensure that it's profitable. For example, Mr. Speaker, Kenya Airways is the leading cargo airline, Nairobi is the leading cargo destination in the region. Yet Kenya Airways are only 10% of the share. We should be able to separate Kenya Airways transport in terms of carrying passengers, and separate the cargo one, because that one looks like it will be more profitable, and then it should be able to take up most of this market share of transport in the area. I will also promise you, Honorable Owen, that we will go together and look at the issues in Malindi. Let me tell you this. As a firm believer of devolution, Mr. Chair, I will not work from Nairobi. I will once in a month or more so often, Mr. Speaker, decide that the ministry today is working from Garissa. We sit there, we sort all the problems, the leaders of that area that relate to my ministry. The next week, I can go and work from Kisumu, Mr. Speaker. It's Kenya. There are agencies there that are for my ministry. I work from there. I sort out all the issues, whether it's Kisumu Airport, whether it is the Homa Bay, Kendu Bay, the Kisumu Port, or I'm going to roads issues in all those parts of the region. Or I go to Mombasa and work from the port to see what's happening at the port, the roads, and all that. I will make sure, Honorable Owen, that we go and sit down in your county and sort out the issues that you have raised.
Thank you. Can we take another batch of
point of information, Mr. Speaker, if you allow me. I would like the nominee to commit.
I will not allow you. Let's give other members an opportunity. Mishi Daud Posing Murugara.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, on a request, since some of those infrastructure are interrelated, I can take more than 4 questions if it helps to save time.
We'll take then the front row, 6. Mishi Daud Posing Murugara Ferdinand Mukami. 1 question each. Honorable Mishi.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, to the nominee, and please I request that I ask 2 questions because this docket has a lot to do with Mombasa County, correct, where I come from. My first question, there are some allegations that the former regime, where the deputy president was the leader of Kenya Kwanza, secretary signed a deal under the guise of economic cooperation with the United Arab Emirates, which will see privately owned Dubai Port World, PZD, take over the operations of Mombasa, Lamu, and Kisumu ports. Can you shed light on this? Because the people of Mombasa depend on the port. You can imagine 27% of the economy of Mombasa and coast at large depend on logistics, transport, and warehousing. And that is why when the operations were transferred to Naivasha, it was chaotic, it was a crisis, people lost jobs, people died, their livelihood, and so many things. I know now there is a directive that it has returned the operations to Mombasa County. But my question would be, is privatization only option to ensure efficiency and increase in revenue? Or there are other means which maybe you are going to employ to ensure that there is efficiency and not through privatization? The other issue, Kenyans have fear that the SGR project, where Kenya took a financing loan through the Exim Bank, that the government is having some challenges to repay that loan. And then the Chinese are going to take over the SGR services and also KPA, because KPA acted as a collateral security in terms of financing the loan. So can you shed light on this? Because what we are seeing, maybe it is a crisis in terms of the KPA and also the SGR services. I thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Speaker. Mheshimiwa Murkomen, congratulations first. What I want to ask, you have talked about the pending bills and all that, and you are aware that most of the road contractors started projects many years back, and they have never finished. It's been like in Meru County has taken 6 years and they've never finished, and it's replicated all over the country. And you've talked about there are a lot of payments to be done. So in your opinion, how do you intend to pay them? Because in the last parliament, I was in the committee by my chair here, Posing, of transport, where we were talking about floating an infrastructure bond so that we could clear off the debts and do new roads. But from what the president talked about a month back, President Ruto, that no new projects will be done until the old ones are finished. So are we looking now at just finishing the other roads and new roads not being done, or under your watch are you going to get new roads done together with finishing and paying the old roads? Kenya Airways has a problem as well, you know that. When I was in the finance committee, they had borrowed a lot of money and banks took equity in Kenya Airways. Are we going to be subsidizing Kenya Airways forever, or what plans do you have for Kenya Airways? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And you will allow me 1 minute, because
one question.
You'll allow me, Chair, because
just one question.
I was a chair in this.
The more you alternate, the more you lose time. Just ask the question.
Yes, but I'm asking your indulgence, Chair. So, Chair, I want to ask the nominee, who is my neighbor, and taking the
good neighbor,
very good neighbor. And I think you are very good neighbor. And I'm sure, no cattle rustling, but I'm sure the people of Elgeyo Marakwet and West Pokot are really watching this Honorable Murkomen, and I want to tell them, the Marakwet and Pokot, we will work with Honorable Murkomen 100%. Let them understand that. Politics in Asia. Now, Chair, Honorable Murkomen, the ministry you are going in, the biggest problem is resources. They have the best expertise. The only problem will be resources. You've mentioned about that, and we expect as Parliament that will come with the ingenious ways. And nobody should tell you that they are floating infrastructure bond. That thing is not that thing will not help roads, Honorable Murkomen. So nobody should lie to you. You should find your own ways to make it a roads bond, the way it was proposed by Parliament. 2, expressway. There was an omission, Honorable Chair, through you to the nominee. If you look at landing, and many Kenyans have been asking me as the chair, if you come from airport, Honorable Chair, and you come to Parliament, you land at Capital Center. It doesn't help. It doesn't become an expressway. Because you land at Capital Center, you have used 1 hour from Kisumu to the airport. And then you land at the Capital Center, you spend 2 hours to be in Parliament. It doesn't help. We had proposed as committee that landing should be found at least within the El Selassie Road. Second, Chair, if you come from Westlands and you're coming to Parliament, you land at, no, not Musiam. There's nothing Bunyala, you land at Bunyala. So it doesn't serve as Honorable Chair. So I'm giving that as a caution to the new. It doesn't help us. the expressway is then a bypass.
They're landing at Bunyala. I thought it's Museum Hill and then Capital.
There is no landing at Museum Hill when you're coming from Westlands.
Yes.
There's no landing, Honorable Chair.
So it's Capital.
Yeah. When you come from Westlands, I was the chair and I'm still chair of that transport until somebody else takes over. When you come from Westlands, Your Excellency Speaker, when you're coming to Parliament, you land at Bunyala Road. There's no landing at even University or Museum Hill. There's landing in Museum Hill if you're coming from this side of town, Jomo Kenyatta Airport.
You are right.
You land there. So, Honorable, this is a very important proposal that we are giving to the new minister, if it's approved by the House, so that they can be able to look at that. And we proposed that if you come from Westlands, you land at Nyayo House. At least you can be able to get into town. And if you're going to Westlands again, you also take off from the same roundabout. If you want to go to Westlands now, you have to go to Bunyala Road. Then you go to Westlands. It doesn't work and it doesn't help. That is number 2. 3, Chair. The issue of Kenya Airways is not been sorted out. It's not out of the wood yet. This Parliament, Honorable Chair, proposed and approved that that Kenya Airways should be nationalized. We should make it our own so that we can do the things we do. That thing went to the executive and it stayed there. Now, if approved, Honorable Murkomen, you'll be able to look at that. Every county, the Honorable Chair, was proposed that it must have a serviceable airstrip so that we open our country. What is the take of the minister as he takes over if approved by Parliament? And finally, I agree.
Those are 4 questions.
Finally,
be fair to others, Posin.
Finally, Chair, the annuity. It was approved by Parliament, Chair, through the chairmanship of Honorable Ichung'wa. I presented when he was budget chairman. We proposed and he approved that thing should be scrapped. It is the most expensive project in this country. 240 million per kilometer. It cannot work, Honorable Chair. And I thank the minister for saying that. 240 million.
Be more obedient, Murugara.
Thank you. Thank you,
You've
Chairman.
asked 4 questions. He will answer them.
All right. Thank you, Chairman. It's still grappling. Thank you, Chair. I think much of what he was asking has been noted, and possibly you'll get the answers. Thank you very much. Nominee, as we vet you, the rural population is actually watching you, because we may be saying grandiose things about our urban centers at the expense of people who live in the rural areas. Most of these places do not have any roads whatsoever. They have what we would call cattle trucks. And they have to live with that in spite of the fact that the economy continues to improve and they are getting motor vehicles to use. When it comes to bridges, you'll find that along the mighty Tana River, for example, between Embu and Garissa, there are only 3 bridges, while it's expansive of hundreds of kilometers. There isn't any bridge that would straight away connect Tharaka Nithi and Kitui, because what exists possibly is between Embu and Kitui. As you take up this mighty docket, you will have 3 agencies under you: the KERA, the KURA, and the KENHA. The one that relates to rural constituencies is the KERA, and is the most underfunded. Do you have any policy, or do you propose any policy to ensure that KERA is equally well funded so that we can see an improvement in the provision of roads in the rural constituencies? Number 2, do you propose to work with, say, the Kenya Army? Because they got great engineers who can assist you in building roads and bridges, which is, some of them are quite economy friendly, because they have this technology of doing bridges that are good for rural constituencies, and the rest of the roads are under the counties. In your own policies, do you propose to keep an eye on the counties, because they allocated money to do rural roads, only for that money to be misappropriated, misspent, and we have no roads but have cattle trucks to think of?
Thank you, Murugara. Ferdinand, 1 question.
Mr. Chairman, I have a proposal. Mr. Chairman, I have a proposal.
Go ahead.
Most of these questions are almost the same. Let's do this. Let everyone ask, and then Murkomen, the nominee, can just answer them at once.
No. Let's finish the first batch.
May I also declare that the candidate before us is also my neighbor, and so there is no bias in what I'm going to ask. First of all, I want to, from your explanation, I see you are very passionate, and I'm very encouraged. The way you have taken up this job, if you are going to pass, and I hope, depending on how you present yourself, will do what you can do. My question is, most of these roads are actually built, and the biggest problem, Mheshimiwa, is that the start maintaining this, to maintain these roads, it takes time. There's what we call way bridges on the roads, and all I see around as you go around, you find actually is manned by the policemen who actually look for bribes, other than getting the right weights on the roads. And the roads are actually in a very bad positions, particularly ones that have been built recently. In my place, they are already destroyed, hardly more than 2 years, because the way bridges, as I see them, actually just people taking money. So what are you going to do about this to be able to see good roads are maintained over time?
Thank you. Mukami?
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations, our nominee, Murkomen. I have one question. I've received a text from one of the Kenyans out there who is watching you, and he's saying that they were trained in a Kenya Railways sector. There were 500 of them, and they were being charged 100,000 each, and the drivers were paying 200,000. Now he wants to know how you are going to help them, because they are still struggling. The other thing I just wanted to tell you about Mau Mau Road. Between Nyeri and Nyandarua, that road has stalled. So we need to know what you're going to do about it. Thank you.
Thank you. You can answer those 6. Then Koech, I'll come to you.
I will try my best, Mr. Speaker, to quickly shorten the answer.
Yes.
Let me start with the port of Mombasa, and I think that's an important question in terms of the port. The port at the moment faces, first of all, our port is doing well, yeah, because now the port is handling 1.4 million TEUs. A great improvement, and is one of the most well-doing ports in the region. But we are facing competition. The port of Djibouti is now handling 800,000 TEUs. If you come to the port of Dar es Salaam, it is working on the expansion of port and will be our major competitor soon. So the thing we must do is, one, recently they meddled on the management of the port and created 14 deputies to the MD in a process that was not procedural. As soon as I am approved, I will make sure that the board of directors, working together with the management and Public Service Commission, will relook at that structure to become a structure that is functioning and can be able to give us results. Number 2 is that the spirit of fear of threatening public officers and telling them to do this and you must be aligned to so and so will come to an end. I'll make sure that everybody can function to their potential and ensure that they are able to contribute to development of the port. The privatization of many parts of the port, which happened, I'm surprised, Honorable Mishi, you have an issue with it, because a lot of it happened a lot in the last 4 years. And Dubai Wall issue, MSC issue, certain local private investors that have taken over already developed BATs by the people of Kenya and almost even paying nothing, including the ICDCs that were given to private investors after the Kenyan government spent about 5 billion. When I get to office, hopefully with your approval, I will make sure that if you used to hear what Kimani Ichung'wah used to call state capture, that is actually what state capture means. It is the use of state power to benefit a few individuals. I'll make sure that I dismantle those agents of state capture and return resources back to the people of Kenya so that they can benefit. On the question of the return of operations to the port, it is important to note that the declaration made by the president was on freedom of choice, freedom of commerce. You choose whether you want to go by road or you go by rail, and you don't force any of the customers to use rail or road. But it doesn't mean that the ICD in Naivasha has been closed. No. The Port of Mombasa, the Kenya Ports Authority is working on a mechanism of attracting the investors, particularly the government of Uganda and South Sudan, so that they can use the port in Naivasha. We also encourage the county government of Nakuru to work with us, if I am approved, to ensure that the investments in that place are approved. The other issue I want to add on the issue of the port is that is the SGR issue, the transport system. We know that the goods are cheaper if they are transported by rail, but they become expensive when they reach the end of the rail to the last mile. The Kenya Ports Authority is working with Kenya Railways to ensure that they can assure customer that when your goods are loaded to the railway, they go straight to the last mile. Now, that is where there is a complement between the truckers and the Kenya Railway, because Kenya Railway is willing to engage truckers at the end of their transport system to give them a particular fee, to transport the goods to their last mile, whether it is Thika, Meru, and other parts of the country. The reason why people prefer the truck is because it's flexible. If it comes from Mombasa, it can go straight to the destination. And those are the issues that we must ensure that there's competition. On the SGR, let me start by saying this. In my preparation to come to this committee, I spoke to everybody whom I thought was a person of influence. And none of them would tell me they have ever seen the SGR agreement. None. None. And I don't want to drop names, but none would say they have seen the SGR. Now, this agreement has become opaque. It's akin to the other agreement we have had in the political circles, where party leaders are told, you just signed the dotted line, don't worry about the contents up here. That is why, Honorable Mishi, you are speculating that maybe the port has been used as a guarantee. Maybe it has not been used as a guarantee. So my first responsibility when I get to office is to find where the agreement is and give it to the people of Kenya through Parliament. Why are we hiding? If the port has been used as a guarantee, we live knowing that as we manage the port and manage the SGR, we know what is our exposure. If the port is exposed, we know it's exposed. You know, everything starts by knowing the truth. And then, you know, the repayment of the SGR now, at least up to now, we are up to date. The problem, Mr. Chair, with the SGR is that we took a loan of 20 years on an infrastructure of 100 years. It becomes impossible to be able to pay that loan by revenue that comes from the railways. And even in 50 years, it will never break even if you load the loans to the railway. So there was a strategic decision that was made at that time that we invest in the infrastructure, and government of Kenya pays back within 15 to 20 years. Now we are choked with the loans because we are paying 80 million per year to the lenders for the SGR. One thing that I want to say here, and I want to repeat so that there is no confusion in the market or among our lenders. We are willing to continue paying the amount that was set. We have maintained in the escrow account 25 billion that was required. But Mr. Speaker, we should be willing, led by the President, to renegotiate the loan period. If we manage to move the loan period even to 50 years, because it's a 100 years investment, we are not going to do another SGR for 100 years. If we can manage to renegotiate to 50 years, Mr. Speaker, then it will ease the burden that Kenyans, the payments that we make every year, and we can divest that money to other parts of the economy. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Dawood, straight to the point, some of the reasons why the contractors are slow is because they have not been paid. Some of the other reasons is because they are shoddy connected cowboy contractors. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, there will be no connection with the minister with contractors. The connection of the minister is with the people of Kenya and Parliament and the appointing authority. And we'll make sure that if you are a shoddy and cowboy contractor getting money and reaping where you do not sow, we will delist you. We will put that list online. We'll make it accessible to all contractors to ensure that you don't get any work in the Republic of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, every substandard road that has been approved by the resident engineer, that resident engineer will take personal responsibility apart from the company itself. Are we not constructing new roads? No, that's not what I mean. Because if we are going to say we will not construct new roads, what will you do to constituencies like Northor, Mr. Speaker, or Kadangachini in Tharaka Nithi, or in Mandera, Mr. Speaker, most of the parts. Even Meru, Mr. Speaker, most parts of Meru, or the road between Nyeri and Nyandarua, passing through the forest there, or all those, Mr. Speaker, or Mount Elgon, yes, Mr. Speaker. Or, Mr. Speaker, Caleb Amis's constituency, that is Honorable Caleb Amis's constituency, Saboti. You know, many people think because Saboti is around Kitale town, if you go inside it, you will find that it's one of the muddiest constituency, Mr. Speaker. So we will have to sit down, sort the immediate problem that we have, and I agree with Honorable Kosing that it should be roads bond. Solve the problem. If we can float 300 billion, we use the 150 billion to solve the problem, and the one above it, Mr. Speaker, we can now use it to construct the roads across this country. Mr. Speaker, on the landing of the expressway, it is true the committee dealt with this issue. I have also spoken to Kenya, and that there are conversations to provide landing at GPO, so that people can land at GPO. The challenge, of course, is that it might touch at Uhuru Park a little bit, and that's where the problem is, Mr. Speaker. So we need to explore engineering designs that will be able to protect the park and at the same time give us a landing. Otherwise, the expressway will become also will not become that useful as it ought to be. Mr. Speaker, KQ nationalization, I think we should think about it longer. So far, the debt that we have given to KQ, part of it has moved our equity as a country to 49%. Intentionally, we didn't want to cross 50% because we didn't want it to be a public company. We still want it to be run as a private company. I think what we need to do with the KQ is to ensure that perhaps create subsidiaries. Maybe a budget airline, like the one we already have, Jumbo Jet, to continue doing what it needs to do. Our cargo airlines be separated, Mr. Speaker, and maybe a charter airlines that can be able to fly to bring tourists from Europe, like my colleague addressed Honorable Owen here. And finally, we might need Kenya Airways to also, and I've had conversation on this, to have other businesses on the side where they provide other services, drone services, Mr. Speaker's surveying services, and other services that other private companies are giving as one way of raising their revenue and bridging their gap, the loans, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, airstrips, I promise, there are only 13 airstrips, fairly functioning airstrips in the country. Mr. Speaker, I promise that as if I am approved, the ministry, as a ministry that deals with policy and construction of airstrips, that Mr. Speaker will put in place a policy to progressively construct an airstrip in every county, Mr. Speaker, so that every county can have an airstrip for emergency services, for transport, Mr. Speaker, and for security issues, Mr. Speaker, if you talk about especially marginalized areas. Honorable Murugara, you are right. We will work together with these agencies to ensure that we provide better infrastructure. I'm more interested in what we are going to do to make Nithi Bridge different, even if it means we dwell a small distance of that area, because Nithi Bridge, for as long as I have lived, has killed as many people. It's a killer, actually, and we must be able to do something to make sure that we solve that issue. Kera funding, we need to ring-fence the funding for Kera, Mr. Speaker, so that that's why we are a bit apprehensive when you take the road maintenance levy fund to development, Mr. Speaker, because we want to ensure that Kera has enough funding to go mashinani, Mr. Speaker. But members here will tell me, because we all live in this country, the problem, part of the problem is Kera, but part of the problem is also ourselves. We must provide proper oversight of the roads constructed under care, especially our road committees. Mr. Speaker, it is true, without any fear of contradiction, that especially in marginalized areas in this county, only roads are constructed in paper. People are issued with tenders, Mr. Speaker. They go and sit in air-conditioned hotels. They fill the papers. And because the place is a security area, is a serious security area, no auditor is allowed to access. Intentionally, Mr. Speaker. In fact, people have vigilantes in those areas to ensure that no auditor can go and determine whether there's a road or not. So year after year, we are putting money to roads. And I'm telling honorable members, we must not benefit from the suffering of our people. What I am going to do is to ensure that no part of this country I will not visit. And you saw Honorable Kindiki speak yesterday seriously about security issues. We will work together with the Minister of Interior to ensure that some of the roads where they give us problem, we declare them as security roads and make sure that, Mr. Speaker, we provide enough security to ensure these people get roads. We will not allow fictitious award of tenders and fictitious payments. There is enough for all of us, Mr. Speaker. I mean, you can make a little money here and there by constructing the road. But to say you are not constructing the road, you're making the money, that is really deplorable. And I will work hard to ensure that we provide oversight. On the relationship between carer...
Deplorable, it's illegal.
It's illegal, of course. It's illegal, Mr. Speaker. But I was looking for a more serious... a more gross terminology.
Immoral too.
Immoral too, yes, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. I know you're away with what. And Mr. Speaker, we will make sure that we provide oversight. On the relationship between county roads and carer roads, we will put in place a more coordinating mechanism. I think signage plays a role. If a road has been done by carer, let them put a sign there that is carer, so that then the counties do not come and superimpose some few mara here and there, and then they take away the money. That is the other problem, duplication. We will eliminate duplication, Mr. Speaker. And we want to ensure that the counties are doing roads, and where those roads can be classified as carer, we can take over to assist the counties where they are unable to do it. On the issue of since the ministry is in charge of classification and policy, we'll make sure that the policy framework is put in place. Honorable Anyonya, I have nothing to add. Kenya has deployed technology which automatically picks your weight, the weight of your goods, and the bill is just sent to you. That is progressively, that's where we are going to go. But insofar as maintenance is concerned, I have answered that question. We will maintain the money so that we ensure that they are used. I didn't get properly, Rehab, the question, Honorable Rehab Mukami, on the trained personnel. You don't need to repeat it. The point is this: since those are specific issues that are touching on specific trained personnel who perhaps have been ignored or not given opportunity to serve despite the training, they spend a lot of money. That's how I understood. I will take over that matter with you personally once approved. LAPSET, oh, sorry, I forgot LAPSET. That's a very important one. Nyeri, and I am aware of the Nyeri
roads.
I'm aware of the Mau roads. They are part of the roads that we promised and this government promised that they will complete all the started roads. I am actually particularly aware about that road because I have relationships around your area. And so when I went there the other day, they reminded me that they want to go to Nyandarua without going the long route because the road is already provided. But you know, there's also the issue of conservation, dealing with the KFS and KWS and the question of the elephants. We must do our roads, but also conserve the environment. So we'll have that conversation to ensure that conservation of environment will be achieved, but people will be able to move in good time. Let me respond to the issue of LAPSET, which I forgot. Mr. Speaker, you were in the cabinet of President Mwai Kibaki that established LAPSET. And you know LAPSET was put in the office of the president as a coordinating body to ensure that those projects along the LAPSET corridor are implemented. The first thing I'll do is to put together all the implementing agencies, improve the coordination of LAPSET as an authority itself. Maybe, if need be, we can bring it as a legal entity properly within an act of parliament, if need be. Number two, the LAPSET corridor must be developed, and I think I should have answered this when I was answering Honorable Mishi's question. The Lamu port has already been completed. 3 baths have been developed, but there are no goods that are docking there. There are no ships that are docking there. What we are going to do is, so far the road from Lamu, Ijara, Garissa is complete. But it's not a road, Mr. Speaker, to be proud of and say, oh yeah, it's complete, then we go. It's a Maram road constructed 40 million per kilometer. Mr. Speaker, the first thing I'll do is to have a conversation with the contractor who was given that job and look into the procurement procedures and the law, with the possibility of just adding something small on top of what the contractor was given for make sure that that road is tarmacked. And then the road from Garissa to Isiolo has just been awarded. Mr. Speaker, we must also push to ensure that it's tarmacked. It's not Maram Road. And then now it will connect from Isiolo to Moyale, where we hope that Kenya Ports Authority will put their inland container depot. We also ensure that the Isiolo, I'm going to find out why exactly the Isiolo port is not functioning, Mr. Speaker, for the reasons that I'm told the runway was short, the contract was not to the standard that was required. We will see, Mr. Speaker, all those issues. That corridor will open up.
Runway is very short.
Yeah, it's too short. So, Mr. Speaker, all that region must be open, Mr. Speaker. And the Bible says a nation is judged by the way they treat the weak, Mr. Speaker, and the marginalized. We must now open up these areas that have been marginalized for a long time, which were then called non-high potential. We must make sure that they are high potential, opening up those roads, opening up the infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, we have a market in South Sudan of 50 million, in South Ethiopian part of bordering Kenya and Moyale of 50 million people. If we are not careful, if we don't finish Lapset immediately, Mr. Speaker, we are in danger of Ethiopians moving to Djibouti port at the expense of a shorter route that would the goods would have come from Lamu port, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think
I now take Koech, Amisi, Raso, Shurie, Emase.
Thank you. My brother, I get the feeling that we probably in the future should rename your ministry as the Ministry of Pending Bills. That notwithstanding, my question is, this ministry seems to be largely under capture by individuals or capture by the Chinese. Most organizations under this ministry, most businesses, Kenyans have complained that they do not get the fair share of contracts when they compete for different tenders. Mostly, you will realize, even in our villages, there is always those Chinese doing projects that can be done by Kenyans and our own entrepreneurs. What will you do deliberately to make sure that you knock off the Chinese and the Kenyans who do the contracting are given a fair share of the business?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. The nominee, you understand, transport system is really the control of the country's economy. You are literally on the road to prosperity or on the road to oblivion. That's where you are. It's your choice. I want to name you some few roads. Kambimiwa, Koikoi, Lukome, Kaptama, then there's Lukome, Gitwamba, there's Bapton, Index, Kisawai, Endebes, then there's Kisawai, Kitalale, Kipsongo, Kitale. I'm naming these roads specifically because they have put that constituency to be one of the only constituencies in Kenya without a road of the bitumen standard. And mostly it is maybe the history, because it has been represented in Bunge by members of opposition since the late Wamalwa Kijana. And I want to make a history. You know, we do so well. You go to the constituency, they tell you, Caleb is back because of very good program on CDF. But you will be abused in funerals because of these roads that you have absolutely nothing, no powers over. And this has happened in many parts of this country, that the government of the day tend to skew development depending on the representation of that member of parliament. And remember, these are the taxpayers. Punish Caleb, but don't punish the people of Saboti. Because this is not the road that's going to be used by Caleb, it's going to be used by the people of Saboti. I've really tried to be part of the government. I don't know how I will do it, but I've really tried. I've really tried to represent my concerns as a member of the government. But I don't know, maybe one day I'll be blessed. But do not punish my people because of Caleb. I really want this because we need to have, it's good you've heard a speech, but we need to have a clear program. You don't need to have members of parliament tamak into your office. They have no powers. Just let the people of the country know that this year, these roads will be constructed. Then you'll not see a member coming to your office. Because people tend to think the people are supposed to construct these roads. But let's just have a countrywide program that everybody will believe in, knowing that next year, we know these roads will be constructed. These areas will be taken care of. Then we'll not have to be tamaking to your office. It will be a clear program. And that's why I want, Chairman, I needed to say that because I'm very passionate. I wanted this issue to end with my reign. That it has been overlooked by my previous leaders, but it wanted to end with my reign. And I want this program to be the countrywide, not the people of Saboti. It needs to be a proper program, not speech. Speech you can speak the whole day. But what is the program? What is this program that you want to share with the people of Kenya?
You're making a speech. sorry, Raso. Honorable members, if you look at the clock, we are doing battle on time. So ask one question each.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Murkomen, congratulations for your nomination. First of all, if this House approves your nomination, I want you to read Gazette Notice number 10 of 1965, so that as you sit down, you are able to see how resources should be spread in this country. Secondly is on LAPSET. There is very little public participation in both Isiolo and Marsabit, potentially where that road is supposed to pass. Coming to my question is on the standardization of projects. When you are constructing roads in different parts of this country, one will cost 20 billion, another one 5 billion. Is it not possible that we come up with the standards so that contractors actually do not become the beneficiaries in all these projects rather than the people? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Chair. And just for your info, the LAPSET Garissa Isiolo is ongoing, so I hope you will start with that one so that since they're on the ground, they can take it to the bitumen standard rather than just leaving it at that. Mine is on the issue of the road maintenance. We seem to just leave our roads so that once they get dilapidated is when we start trying to maintain them. Could you be coming up with a program that we can do continuous maintenance, so that we avoid doing expensive repairs once the road has been dilapidated? Thank you.
Emase.
Thank you, Chair. The nominee, I want to emphasize on the issue of the quality of the roads that we are constructing. Teso South got the only tarmac road, the first and the only one, in 2017, that is Busia Malaba. But if you pass, and I want to invite you to visit and drive along that road, the work is shoddy. Already we have potholes along the road, yet it's even incomplete because the drainage system is still being done. They dug those, and it's not even complete. So my question is, the issue of standards, nominee, if we approve you, you need to put a lot of seriousness to ensure that this government, the people of Kenya, get value for money. Good works. And on the same, I just allow me ask a question that has been asked by my constituent, that the dwelling of Busia Korinda Junction Road, money was released by the British Commissioner in 2015 through Trademark East Africa. Until today, no works has been done. Probably you need to follow up on that and find whether any funds were released for the dwelling of that portion of the road from town to Korinda Junction and what happened to that. Otherwise, thank you so much.
Naisula, one question.
Thank you, Chair. And I think the question on equity, fairness has been touched on. So I'll ask about something that I'm passionate about. And I was working on a bill in the last parliament, but it lapsed before we concluded. And I plan to introduce it in the 13th parliament. And that is that the Kenyan road system and infrastructure is so much skewed just towards vehicles, you know, so we look like we're discriminating on the majority of the users who are actually the pedestrians, cyclists, and other people who do not own vehicles. And so I really want to understand, and always the excuse is the lack of funds. Well, you see, we shoot and we put so much money in one road, but we don't think of the other users of roads. So I just want to know, how will you improve mobility for vulnerable road users like cyclists and pedestrians across the country?
Vicaria.
Thank you, Chairman. Murkomen is a good friend of mine. And we'll miss him in the Bunge Football Club. I don't know whether to approve him or not, so that he can continue playing for us. But all the same, Honorable Chair, this is a question from a constituent. These are people who have invested in transport, trucks, graders, and all this. What they are asking is, what policy do you have so that when you give a contract, either a Chinese company or from wherever, that the only thing that they will come with is that letter of award, so that they can be able to hire trucks, graders, and all other road equipments from the local Kenyans. And it is, you know, if you look at NAC Bank and other banks, actually people had gone for that. They took trucks on equipment, on loans, and all of them were later, you know, repossessed. So what policy will your ministry have for purposes of you know, giving jobs to these hustlers who own a truck or a grader? And lastly is about the KA land in Nakuru that was meant for an airport, which was around 700 acres. I'm told the former Nakuru County regime has started subdividing. That land was meant for an airport, but because of some environmental issues, because of the flamingos and things like that, it was said it is not tenable to have an airport there because of the bats, because they might come back to Lake Nakuru. So that land is there, and people have started grabbing. And you know, we went there to an IDP camp, people who had been displaced, and they are there. And they don't have land, and that land sitting there, and people have started encroaching. Maybe what is the plan that you have so that these IDP maybe can be given an opportunity to be able to have, if in case that airport will never be put in place? Thank you.
Mole.
Thank you very much. I can only declare that Murkomen is a friend, is not a neighbor. Thank you very much, nominee, and I want to hear your thoughts on the bus rapid response transport.
Are you speaking to the mic? Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yes. Okay. Let me... All right. I want to hear your thoughts on the bus rapid transport system, better known as BRTS, joining or bringing people to the city of Nairobi and the other cities. And I want to give you a clear dynamics of Nairobi. If you look at the original metropolitan, whereby it consisted of Kajiado, Kiambu, Machakos, and part of Murang'a. And if you want to deal with the issue of congestion and road network within these counties, I think you need to get a very clear framework and give us the plans, supervision, and designs. Nominee, you might want to do things very fast, but I will tell you one thing which has happened in this country. We failed because we failed to plan. Please, for this rapid bus transport, will sort out a lot of mess and roads. And I've heard you clearly say that you are going to scrap the annuity program. I can assure you in Matungulu there is an annuity program running from Tala to Donyo Sabuk. The contractor is on site. I don't know what to tell the people. If you scrap it, what will happen to that contractor who has a contract with the Kenya government? With the road stall, are we going to get into penalties? Are we going to get into legal tussle? And the common man continues suffering because you have scrapped the program. I want you to give us a very clear negotiating plan on some of these issues. As Caleb said, let's not have speeches. Proper planning, and if you want to succeed, plan well.
Junet.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I should declare it's true that the nominee was my teacher one time, Chairman. But that's beside the point now. He was my teacher. Yeah, so, Chairman, I wanted to ask the nominee, who is also my friend, also to declare that. But there is transport on the road, there is transport in the ocean, and then there's transport in the air. But there's one form of transport I want to remind you that might not be, you are aware of it, but you might not be knowing it very well. It's called lake transport. There's a huge transportation in the lake, going to Uganda, going to Tanzania. There's a big transport there. What is your plan on the lake transport system, Mr. Nominee?
And very quickly answer those more comments.
Yeah, Chair.
You can see it's saying time up.
Yeah, but Mr. Chair, if you allow me 5 minutes first.
I allow you to answer.
Before I answer your questions, 5 minutes. On two things. One, I did not complete the issue of the airport, and it will be very unfortunate to leave here without telling you what's happening at KA. The airport in the JKIA currently receives 7.5 million passengers a year. Compared regionally, Ethiopia is now receiving 15 million. That one was 7.5, 15 million. Rwanda is 2.5. Rwanda is doing an expansion, and quickly in an year or two, they may move to 10 million. Ethiopia is planning to get to 100 million passengers at the airport by 2024. Meanwhile, we have tents at JKIA, Mr. Speaker, as a terminal. When you land JKIA and you're saying we are a transport hub, you land there, you find you are processed through a tent. Mr. Speaker, if I am approved, number one, I will relook at the issue of Greenfield Terminal that was cancelled in year 2016. Already the contractor had been paid about 4 billion shillings. And because of the cancellation, the contractor has gone to court. There is a case at the International Chamber of Commerce in Paris, Mr. Speaker, with an exposure of 17 billion to KA. I will use my knowledge as a lawyer and a negotiator for that purpose, but also resources that are in our country to take this case out of court, renegotiate the contract itself, and possibly through PPP, we build the Greenfield terminal. That time it was 56 billion. It might be more. But because airports generate revenue, we should be able to get good investors who are coming to build that terminal. Number two, Mr. Speaker, we cannot continue the same way. We have only one runway. If we want to be a serious regional hub, we must also explore ways of constructing the other planned second runway, which was part of the Vision 2030 plans. Number two, Mr. Speaker, since nobody asked this question, I really feel like I should be able to say this. Road carnage, Mr. Speaker, and the role of NTSA, which is in my ministry, should I be approved, Mr. Speaker, there are certain plans that are on the way that I will make sure that they are implemented. One is to ensure that the issue of smart driving license is rolled out across the country. We will work with NTSA, but possibly even with our private investors who are willing through business to distribute the electronic smart driving license, because the smart driving license has very important features that include identification of the party's insurance information, your PIN certificate, that becomes very useful when you deal with security, and you heard my colleague Senator Kindiki speak to it yesterday. Number two, we will make sure that, Mr. Speaker, car inspection, because part of the problem is inspection, and somebody had raised it earlier. We have only 30 inspection units in the entire country to inspect over 4 million vehicles, Mr. Speaker, annually. We will work with NTSA to privatize car inspection and to ensure that the private entities that are going to do the private inspection will get a small fee. The rest of the resources come back to the NTSA. They will take responsibility, Mr. Speaker, for the work they do to make sure that we are able to inspect as many vehicles as all the vehicles, Mr. Speaker, and hold them accountable. And that information is loaded to your smart number plate, which, Mr. Speaker, now must also be rolled out to the entire country. We will also make sure that all the driving schools, Mr. Speaker, training schools are all registered, monitored, and supervised, so that we make sure that we train our drivers very well. Mr. Speaker, on the use of technology on traffic, and particularly in the city here, already there is a pilot project that is being done by KURA, Kenya Urban Roads Authority. And NTSA is working also on Transport Integrated Management System. I will tell you something very astonishing, Mr. Speaker, and shocking actually. In one of the cameras they installed in one of the corners, I'll not say where, in Nairobi, they established that per day, the camera records 300 offenses. One camera, but it's in a roundabout, so there are 4 cameras. All the 4 cameras each record 300 offenses. And of the 300 offenses, Mr. Speaker, they are about, the fine goes up to 3,000. If you calculate the amount of money raised from those 4 cameras, it comes to 1.2 billion, Mr. Speaker, in a year. That's one roundabout. What we are going to do, and this is not something we're imagining, it's already being worked by KURA, and NTSA is also working. We will bring them together. We will make sure that this technology is put across all the roads, our urban roads to start with, and the highways. Then, Mr. Speaker, we will remove police from the road. It will be the smart technology we are using. The e-police, the e-police will work, record all these offenses, and instant fines are levied. Of course, we'll have to come back to Parliament here to pass the proper legislation and bring together all the agencies. If we do that, we are likely actually per year to raise not less than 50 billion in Nairobi alone from offenses. Of course, people will now behave as you progress. When you go to the highways, Mr. Speaker, if we manage actually to dwell the roads the way we are dwelling and then put the cameras there, we don't need a policeman in the highway. You just records the offenses and you take responsibility. Your fines come to you. Your insurance will be expensive if you become a serial offender, like it does in all over the world. That is how we are going to reduce, Mr. Speaker, road carnage, and we make Kenyans become more responsible. Now, the good thing with this technology, it doesn't know this is the Speaker, this is the Minister, this is who. Everybody will just be recorded. The idea of meeting a policeman and rolling down your window and saying, oh, this is me, and they say, oh, Mheshimiwa, just go, will not be there, because everybody will be able to pay for that. Mr. Speaker, therefore, let me now go to the answers that questions that have been asked. I agree with Honorable Koech, the question of capture of this sector. Honorable Koech, the good thing is that I don't come from this sector per se. I am an outsider. So I'm not conflicted. I've never been a road contractor. I have never worked in mostly on most of the sectors. So I tell them that when I arrive, Mr. Speaker, there is a new sheriff in town if I'm approved, and that we'll do things the right way. Number 2, you talked about local contractors, and somebody else also raised that issue down here. We'll make sure that the policy that was put in place that all contracts below 1 billion shall go to local contractors is strictly implemented, because we cannot continue growing foreign contractors and we punish our own contractors. And we will go up to the company's registry to lift the veil, so that you don't become a foreigner, register a local company and say I'm a local company. Yeah, we'll make sure that its company is owned by citizens, so that we achieve the intention that only companies that will get the below 1 billion will go to citizens. Let's put it that way, so that we can be able to grow our own citizens. The roads on Ebakalem, you are my neighbor. I live in your county, and the point is that there is no opposition. If you know Murkomen well, I work with everybody. And the government of Kenya, promised by the president also, is that we are not going to develop this country based on whom we know and where someone comes from. If you want me to, soon after approval, to go with you to see the roads, we will go there, and then I will work on the plans. Of course, we don't want to make roadside declarations of just standing there and saying, barabara kutoka hapa up to there, we will construct. I will be coming there when we have information and plans on how we will be able to do those roads. And I invite not just you, Honorable Raso doesn't have roads inside his constituency. Many roads in the northeastern part of the country are marginalized, not to mention also in many parts of the north, every part of the country actually has a place. Honorable Raso talks about I know, Honorable Caleb, I know you said you tried so hard to be part of government, but if you ask me, you were part of government for the last 5 years. So it doesn't help. Even being part of government does not help. Yeah, if the principle is marginalization, it is just marginalization. So we must make sure that we do that. Honorable Raso, I am very much aware anyone who is a scholar on areas of devolution must always start from sessional paper number 10 of 1965. And I know the marginalization that came in. That's why LAPSET and other projects were put in place to remove this idea of establishing other areas as low potential areas. Public participation, we will ensure that in the final implementation we do that and we work with you, and I agree with you entirely. Even in a few briefs I've seen is that you find in one corner a road per kilometer is 80 million, in another place 40 million. We must have standard roads that can be counted. Honorable Shuria, yes, I agree, the road is ongoing, and we want to have the conversation with the contractor first so that we have a plan of Lamu to Isiolo. It's my hope that it is stomached, not just Mara, so that it can attract the investments that we want to have. Continuous maintenance is the same issue that you've said. We must be able to do that, and we must ring-fence the resources for that. Honorable Emase, yes, I will come to see, and I will first establish the dwelling of that road, whether it is true, and quality of the roads. You are very right, not just in your county, also in my county. I know roads that were constructed, and in less than 5 years they have potholes, and there is no any maintenance. This is a thing that should be a thing of the past. On the question of non-motorized transport system, I want to say this. Just another statistic, Mr. Speaker. Nairobi, a half of Nairobians walk. Yet the budget for non-motorized transport is 2%. We don't have walking paths and we don't have cycling paths. In fact, many pedestrians are hit while walking. And this country, we lose, by the way, we lose 1,300. We've already lost 1,300 motorists, pedestrians, Mr. Speaker, hit by vehicles. I will check what statistics it is in Nairobi. It is, my plan is to, and this is, Mr. Speaker, it's not just Nairobi. If you go to Iten, Mr. Speaker, and Eldoret and Kapsabet, that is the area that produces the best athletes in the country, some of the best athletes in the country. But they don't have even a running track for training. Those of you who follow sports, you know in 2021, my friend Jobri Kamaror was preparing for Olympics, and he was ready to win as a gold of 10,000. But he was hit by a motorbike on the right side of the road. And many athletes have been hit by motorbikes. Mr. Speaker, we must make non-motorized transport, because it's the highest number of traffic in the country. We must make sure that it is a mandatory for every contractor, and the bill of quantities that's going to be presented should include cycling paths and walking paths, Mr. Speaker, and severe punishment. If you find the violators, if you have your motorbike and you are jumping into a walking path, Mr. Speaker, we must put severe punishment, and I agree that we must deal with that issue at the policy level and, Mr. Speaker, at the implementation level. Honorable Kikaria, on the airports, you've said Nakuru, but do you know that there was supposed to be an airport somewhere in Naivasha town, which has been choked by buildings? If you ever fly in Naivasha, you will see something like there was a runway of some sort, but there is no the runway has been, the land has been grabbed. The first thing we need to do is to, before even we construct every airstrip in every county, we must restore first and safeguard the properties of the KA across the country. And I will work with you and other Kenyans to ensure that. Of course, I will still be training with you at Nyayo Stadium. I don't know if I will play for Bunge FC. Land as yes. I thought there was a question on
the equipment, road equipment.
Yes. Again, even where, that's a good question, supplementing what Honorable Koech said, even where we have ring-fenced contracts below 1 billion to local contractors, we must go ahead and say the contracts above 1 billion, 4, 5, 10 billion must have a component of local contractors who are making their contribution to be subcontracted. On the bus rapid transport, my friend Honorable Mule, I can assure you that I am aware about it. There are a few issues. There are financial issues, actually. The company still requires a certain amount of money, almost 2 billion, to complete the infrastructure, and then the leasing of the buses. We will work together to see that that is achieved. In fact, that's not the only thing. We make sure that Namata is empowered to coordinate road transport in the metropolitan area by having commuter rail working and the buses working, and we will work with private investors, because as you can see now, we don't have the money to be able to construct the roads ourselves and the railway. I don't think it is true that Tala or Donyo Sabuk is annuity. We need to confirm, because the annuity programs that are ongoing, as I inquired, was only the one that is going to from Loitoktok down to Taita Taveta, and the one that is in Samata, Modokash. But if that be the case, no, let me put qualification. If that be the case, you know, you've already declared you're my friend. Apart from your right to come and see the cabinet secretary, if I'm approved, we can also sit down, me and you, to see the details of that fact. But let me assure you this, even if we are not going to continue with annuity programs, it does not mean that we will cancel haphazardly existing contracts. We will expose the country to very serious penalties. So already the contracts that have already been awarded will continue. Although if it was possible, the ones that are almost being awarded, to be awarded the same contractors but through conventional means, to save us, because if we continue this way, in the year 2027, and Honorable Kimani knows this because he was the budget committee, by 2027, we may not have money in the road maintenance levy to finance more roads or maintain roads. Annuity program, 2-3 people, contractors, will have taken the entire money. Just keep it in your mind that we did 91 kilometers in using 28 billion. The last thing is Honorable Junet. I think I mentioned this when you had stepped out a little, that the Kenya Ports Authority...
He hadn't stepped out, he came late.
Mr. Chair, you know, Mr. Chair, I cannot jeopardize my own approval. So I have to look for a more friendly language to say this. But Mr. Speaker, the Port of Mombasa has already started processes of dealing with, the story of MV Uhuru and the transport of goods from the Port of Mombasa. Later, even outside this committee, we'll discuss matters of the railway going to Kisumu to ensure that we spur Kisumu as a regional hub for matters of transport. I talked about Kendu Bay, Homa Bay, and all those local transport by the Kenya Ports Authority.
More comment, I'll ask you 2 questions. Number 1, you've talked about everything except discipline on our roads. Michuki restored sanity on our roads in less than 2 months. Everybody was obeying traffic signs, everybody was orderly, everybody was respectful. What are you going to do about that? Number 2, road signage everywhere in this country is vandalized. You put road signage, you put embankments, they're all vandalized within no time. Can you consider looking for materials for signage and embankment that are not vulnerable to scrap metal dealers, because they're the ones who keep vandalizing these materials? And many accidents are caused because of lack of signage and embankment. And lastly, the point Koech raised. You have to bring some affirmative action to local contractors. A local contractor competing with a foreigner is allowed to bring in construction equipment duty-free, is given a maram pit to mine maram for free, is given a quarry to quarry materials for free, and is exempted sometimes from even VAT. And those foreigners are supposed to compete with local contractors for the same jobs. The local contractors go to the local bank, borrow money, buy trucks, pay duty on them, hire maram pits, pay for them, look for quarries, pay for them. How can they compete? What affirmative action do you have for local contractors?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the Michuki rules, listening to Professor Kindiki, my friend, and my teacher yesterday, I think we will have more collaboration between the Interior Ministry and our Transport Ministry, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the first thing, if you heard me right, we want to deploy the transport integrated management system, which otherwise also labeled by Kenya Urban Roads as intelligent transport system. Okay, Mr. Speaker, if we deploy that technology, we don't need to do the analog way of Michuki. We don't need to see policemen running, people, driving. We just tell you, continue your bad manners. Then we benefit from it. If we continue punishing you, punishing you today, punishing you tomorrow, punishing you the next day, that will be a deterrent, Mr. Speaker. And I believe that the resources that we get from these people can now be deployed to doing the road signage, supporting our traffic police, which is underfunded, ensuring that we have more e-technology expanded in the rest of the country. So I am going to come back to National Assembly and Parliament for that reason with a clear proposal on how to roll out the integrated transport system in the city of Nairobi to start with. And if we put these cameras in all corners, Mr. Speaker, we will make sure that we will catch all the offenders, Mr. Speaker, and take advantage of their bad manners to build this nation. And I am sure in less than 2 or 3 years, there will be deterrent. So I will be working in silence, Mr. Speaker, because the times require one to work in silence. There was a time of Michuki, you had to shout. But this time round, Mr. Speaker, with technology, you don't need to shout. You just make sure that you catch your offender, you send the bill to him, you make his insurance extremely expensive. In fact, if you continue being a serial offender, to reach a stage where you will abandon your car because the insurance is more expensive than the car itself. And I think that will be a deterrent. I have told, and this is something we'll work together with other departments. On the affirmative action, part of the affirmative action is to ensure below 1 billion goes to Kenyan citizens. Already that will ensure that they are being paid. The other thing is to ensure that you prioritize Kenyan citizens when we are paying the pending bills. Because again, they are the ones being auctioned. The people are committing suicide. People are, families are breaking up because of pending bills. We'll ensure that we start with them to make sure that their pending bills are paid. On the issue of material, it is true. When the government declared a ban on sale of scrap metal, there was a lull for some time. In fact, the Kenya Railway people told me that at least their metallic scrap metals were safe. But as soon as that was lifted, we face also another challenge. And Mr. Speaker, I will invite professors in university and inventors, Mr. Speaker, and Kenyans who are watching me, young Kenyans who are watching me from across the country, should think about this as one way of inventing something that they can be able to make a living and protect our roads with proper road signage without really being stolen by scrap metal. Although if we deploy the cameras very well, with continuous active e-police in the command center, we'll be able to identify directly, Mr. Speaker, with clarity that it is so and so is coming, it's this time of the hour, and possibly, like the way we've deterred a lot of crime because of the cameras in Nairobi City, this can be also one of the solutions to make sure that people are not vandalizing our road signage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Your last 3 minutes, tell us your wish.
Mr. Speaker, my first wish is to say, let me say this, that I hope the committee will find it in its entire wisdom, collectively and individually, right to approve me to this docket. I have been a member of parliament. I understand the issues that affect the citizens of Kenya. I am available and ready to interact with colleagues and to interact with the people of Kenya in every part of this country and solve problems that the people of Kenya are facing without really waiting, Mr. Speaker, to be visited in my office. My office will make sure that it's devolved as per the expectations of the Constitution and reach out to all parts of the country. I will apply principles of equity, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that marginalized areas and areas left behind are carried along. And you know that, Mr. Speaker, because when we were in Senate, you saw my efforts to protect the counties, the marginalized counties in the county allocation revenue formula, even when their members of parliament were not ready to protect themselves. And so, Mr. Speaker, I will go out of my way to do my job diligently. And I hope after my tour of duty in this position, if approved, Mr. Speaker, is over, Kenyans will look back and say there lived a more serious, more committed public servant who was willing compassionately to solve problems that are bedeviling the people of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the time you gave me. I think this is the beginning of our interaction. I hope in the future we will be able to have more interaction with members of parliament as a representative of the people, members, council of governors, and other entities that work on matters roads to make sure that we solve the problems that are bedeviling our transport and infrastructure docket. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you, thank the appointing authority, and thank, without forgetting, Mr. Speaker, and more importantly, the people of Elgeyo-Marakwet County, without whom, Mr. Speaker, I would never be who I am, because they are the ones who took care of me, protected me, elected me, and now I have an opportunity given by the President to serve the people of Kenya. I want to say thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Murkomen. Before I release you, you will furnish our clerk and her team a copy of the judgment that you made reference to, the one that exonerated your law firm. Once you do that, you are released to go to your other national duties. Members, I'll give you 5 minutes to stretch. You will resume at 11:21.
Na mtazamaji, na hapo ndipo tamati ya kikao hiki cha kwanza cha kumsahili seneta wa gatuzi la Elgeyo-Marakwet na vilevile ambaye aliwahi kuhudumu kama kiongozi wa walio wengi katika bunge la Seneti, Onesmus Kipchumba Murkomen, akitetea ufafu wake kuwa waziri wa barabara na uchukuzi, wizara muhimu zaidi katika taifa hili. Kumbuka kwamba ameweza kuweka paruanja masuala ambayo